Let's try and stay on schedule. You know, when Philip and I engaged on this topic in Joburg months ago, I decided, yes, I don't know. I mean, this is the stuff. That's why I didn't go to varsity to these classes. This is somewhat kaka, in my personal sort of opinion. But Philip feels differently, and so we're going to try and make the case that asset management is actually a key component of the overall value creation of this industry of ours, mining, and especially how is it applicable in Africa. Because again, there are some perceptions about what happens in Africa somehow different to what happens in other parts of the world. So let's see which of those myths survive this conversation. We gave you very, very, very little time. So I'm going to ask the master of the clock to actually put 28 minutes on, which is exactly the time we've got. Then I give you most of my Q&A time. Okay. But I may interrupt if there's a pressing question towards the end, I may interrupt. The rest of the time is yours. 28 minutes, and Philip, off you go.
Okay, and feel free to intervene. Bernard, you now cannot say that you don't understand this topic anymore because we've well educated you. So you're now semi-converted already anyway because you allowed us. Thanks so much. What happens in Africa stays in Africa. Yeah, so exactly. Thanks, everybody. So I'm going to kick off by a statement made by a good friend and colleague of mine called Roux. He is currently the head of global asset management for Anglo American. And he says, within the mining realm, there's only three key aspects that's important. He says, first, it's the demand. And he says that we cannot control. I said, yes, except if you're in diamonds. The second one is the geology. He says the geology is going to be what it's going to be. We can understand it, we can quantify it, but that's as far as it goes. It's going to be what it's going to be. And then thirdly, it gets down to the process, and that's where us miners become interested. It's of getting that predictable and reliable feed from the operation. And that's where really the heart and the core of asset management comes in, because that's what we want to be involved in, what we want to take charge of almost. So, and that then almost started birthing this concept of let's focus more on asset management. So what Bernard said earlier in the year in South Africa, we had a get-together of most of the mining companies. We had role players like Eskom and Transnet and so forth. And we really started debating. We are seeing core issues within an industry, not only with a specific client or operator, but within the industry that was systematic and symptomatic of, yes, also limiting our growth, but putting us in a position where we suddenly couldn't control neither the quantity or the quality. And that then led to the birth of this topic that I've put a panel together to discuss very briefly today and just almost whet your appetite. So if we're saying this, is asset management a key to unlock growth for us in Africa? So I also want to say for those of you that's really technical, hardcore in mining, come from a mining background, wake up, you're going to enjoy this. For the economists, this may be interesting, and for the politicians, you can sleep now. So that's fine.
So I can go.
No, you all of them. You're a hardcore miner, economist, and a politician. So sorry about that. So just quick introduction of the panel. I almost wanted to say my board. It would be nice, but not yet. So a good friend of mine, Singh. He comes from a rich asset management background. He used to be with a company called T.A. Cook that then became part of Accenture. So I call him almost, as part of my panel, the muscle. Then Ed over there, thanks so much for coming. Ed Bardo came from far away. Flew in from the US, and he comes from Aspen Tech. A rich wealth of knowledge in terms of what's technology doing in the mining sector. I call him my rocket scientist because there's a lot of brains over there. Then we've got the wallet over there, Thabiso, Sekano from the IDC. Very important to understand as well from investment point of view. So how real and how important is this whole asset management thing? And then the brains, Prof. Glen from Wits University as well. We need the brains as part of this as well. So I'm going to start off with a question for Joy and say, Joy, with regards to this whole topic of asset management, and from your expertise and point of view, what trends are you seeing, let's call it industry general, but then starting focus specifically on mining and taking us into Africa, that's really highlighting what's happening in asset management?
Thanks, Philip. Trends are following the conversation we've heard today already. So capital is expensive. We're limited on processing capacity in the West, and we need to make more with the asset we have. And that goes into kind of 2 or 3 key topics. Trusting our data, getting into learning and knowledge exchange between industries. And maybe Professor Nwaila will talk about how the industry is, or how academia is working on supporting the industry. And then we need to get into increasing value to the investors because of the diversification, which we also heard about in investment vehicles. So we're getting into private and public funding models together. Now, we have this situation in a period of maybe lower investor confidence. And how do we build investor confidence? So that's focusing on adding value, giving returns in low margin periods like we are now. And then if we think about margin, where does it come from? You said it rightfully so. Geology is hard to control. The market demand, well, follows the cycle of the commodity, but we can control the asset. And we've had a lot of strategic discussions, so maybe I dive a bit into the operations now, right? So when we see asset management as a topic, many of us associate it with different phases in the life cycle, whether it's design and conception, it's operations or dirty maintenance, or decommissioning. And we've got operators in the industry which do really well in all those spaces. However, we're notorious for not delivering on time or in full. And I think that's the focus in asset management. We need to become more disciplined in delivering on time and in full, whether it's a capital expansion project or it's a simple proactive maintenance task list. And then that needs to shift the investor focus to finding the asset managers, the asset operators, that are actually moving the conversation from cost and availability to actually capacity, properly designed capacity, and throughput. Because throughput is what puts money on the board. Right? So if we want to put runs on the board, we need to become more responsible asset managers, and that is going right down to the nuts and bolts and putting in KPIs which actually support that throughput and not just availability.
Okay. Thanks, Joy. So, Ed, from your point of view, I see in this realm that we're talking about, there's a lot of enablers, but two important enablers is one is our people that's involved with this, but then technology as well. From your side, similar question. I want you to explain from where you're sitting, from a global industry, but then with an African mindset, where's technology taking us? What's the trends that you're seeing within, and I think there's massive growth and uptake of technology within the mining sector, and this chasing almost, I won't say chasing the sun, a South African would appreciate that, but what's happening in terms of mining and technology in Africa and relating to asset management?
No, I think this is a wonderful question, Philip. Thank you for asking. What we see, and I have to preface this by saying that much of what we do comes from experience with deploying different technologies within African mining. One of the key aspects we see now is everybody's enamored by digital. This word digital transformation and what that means to them and how that will influence mining in general. But in many cases, when it comes down to it, how will this actually impact you to the type of KPIs that Joy was mentioning? There's no real tie to understanding how these technologies can transform. One of the things that we've experienced, particularly with African mining, is we've seen that digital technology can act as a great democratization of technology. It allows for the fact that even companies that feel that they're not well developed, they're not prepared for a technology advancement, that the capabilities of technology to bring them into that age now and help allow them to take a step in the mine to achieve their goals with technology are there. So there are a lot of examples in Africa where this happened, and one of my favorite ones, of course, is digital banking. How in some of the most underdeveloped countries in Africa, they were able to leapfrog a lot of ways that they were doing things and start to run their business and so forth by doing mobile banking from their cell phone. Digital technologies that democratized technology made it possible. And so we see in the technology space, and this is practical, what we need to do in Africa is we need to get quick wins that allow them to see the results on KPIs that matter to them. And so one of those areas is asset performance management. One of those areas we can really start to show a difference between using the data that they'll probably already have, though they think they don't. They think it's not good enough. And start to show them that we can actually do something of value for something you care about today, but haven't been able to do that with a data-driven approach to prove that it works. And this is how we bring that and how we help transform and what we've already done across Central Africa, Southern Africa, Northern Africa.
Just to add on that, the uptake, you'd say in your opinion, in terms of, let's say, more developed countries where mining is more developed, the Australias of the world, I'd like to say probably the type of South Africans, America, Europe and so forth. Going into Africa, do you see a large appetite for uptake?
There is primarily due to a lot of the marketing that's gone on globally for digital technologies and so forth. Everybody wants to jump on the technology bandwagon, and typically the reason they don't is because they don't believe they're ready for it, or they believe it's long-term investment for no immediate returns. And so the focus we have, for example, is on the quick wins, the ways to show within the African market, specific for the particular mining customer, how that technology is going to deliver a result in their first year, their second year, not 5 years down the line. And so being able to convince them that you can do that requires a lot of upfront time and education to get them there, or the uptake won't be there because they'll just continuously feel like, oh no, we're behind the rest of the world.
Okay. So, Prof. Glen, one of the topics when we did the Asset Management Council, what we called it, the discussion was specifically our people. I said in the beginning, one of the enablers really when we get to asset management is the people that we have on the ground, because they're our hands and feet, they're the one that's touching our asset, they're the ones that are operating our asset still in many times and maintaining it. And there was this cry out in industry, everybody was struggling with the same phenomenon, and we can call it the brain drain, we can call it what we want, but that our people on the ground were lacking in terms of skill, lacking in terms of their performance, many other aspects. My question to you is, sitting in an academic space with a strong mining support from Wits University point of view, what are you guys doing strategically, and how do you see it strategically in terms of enabling this new group of resource engineers, reliability engineers, that's going into industry to be well prepared to take on this challenge of asset management and to give good quality to the end user, the miners at the end of the day that's going to take up. I think we've had a lot of discussion and proudly saying the bursary programs, the Anglo-Americans in the olden days of bursaries that pulled engineers into the system and so forth. Where is that today?
Thank you for that excellent question. And I should say the following first.
Does he pass, Professor? Did you give him a pass rate for that question?
65%.
65.
Oh, much better than
establishing.
I did back then.
Still has yet to grade you, so be prepared.
So I will say from the university side, we see asset management as a system of values. And you can call it a culture, because there is no degree in the world that is called asset management. All the mining degrees or geology degrees or mechanical engineering degrees are general degrees. And you only become a specialist once you get into the workspace. So we noticed over time that there's a huge gap between the expectations of the industry itself and what was being offered by the universities. So one of the examples that was done, at least by the university that I work for and other universities, was to build an infrastructure which is called the Sibanye-Stillwater Digimine Lab. And this is actually a mock mine beneath the building with a set of systems. And these systems, of course, include material tracking, and we also have a center, which other people call it an intelligent remote operating center. And the main aim for this is to expose students who have never been to a real mining environment before we even take them to the field on how this is done. And asset management forms the core of the portfolio, and we divide it into about 4 aspects. The first one is mainly on the procurement of assets themselves and what sort of systems have to be in place and so forth. The second aspect is actually the management of the asset itself, and this is where much of the operational technology on what the asset is used for comes into play. The third aspect, which you can say that is quite academic, is simulated-based learning, where we actually create simulated scenarios of how the operations run. And we've actually started also doing this with the actual mining operations, where people are being exposed to different scenarios to expose them on how things work. The last aspect, which was created not so long ago, is that we have changed the entire second-year structure, first-year and second-year structure of engineering degrees, where we have introduced new courses. One of them is called data-driven decision-making, and the main aim for that is to allow upcoming engineers and upcoming scientists to actually have hands-on experience on working with large data sets and congregation of information that actually comes from different modules or different equipments and so forth. And then lastly, to add on top of this, is that the institute itself where I work, we have also went further to create what we call capacity development courses. And this is actually a partnership between the Wits Mining Institute and a number of original equipment manufacturers together with mining companies, because we have realized that us coming up with problems and present them to the industry as solutions doesn't really work. We actually have to go into the industry and find out what are some of the core issues, and that is what we have been doing.
Okay. Question, linking onto this, you're talking about partnerships, and it's great you say so. OEMs are partnering with you. You guys are really from a scientific point of view. I think Ed will love this, driving the industry in a certain direction. How strong and how mature would you say is partnership from specifically miners in Africa and guys operating in Africa, reaching out to universities and to tertiary education and say, this is our demand, this is what we need, this is what we would like to see coming through the system that's ultimately going to be the engineer on my asset, managing the performance of that asset?
So initially it used to work like this. We used to be the one who invite mining companies, and whenever they come and leave, they will say that some of their operations are even 10 times ahead of what the universities offered. He also visited us and he told me that he wouldn't send anyone from his family to Wits if we don't change how we do things. So
It doesn't sound like me, but it's okay. Abuse me.
but you did. So what has happened lately was that we had to put ourselves as thought leaders first in a number of topics, and to show that everyone who is actually involved in the process does have a fundamental understanding of the process of what is required. So lately, we have been having a number of mining companies, and an example being one of them, Sibanye-Stillwater, that has built a lab, which is enabling this remote operating center that I have mentioned. But on top of that, there are other number of mining companies that are either coming with a specific issue and say that we want you to assist us with these. And the other one is not only the mining companies, also government itself coming to say that, well, you are a neutral party, meaning that we do have high quality data because mining companies donate to us. Can you assist us with formulation of policy, of data-driven policy type of setting? So we have a number of key players, which are the mining companies, the government itself, and also junior mining companies also coming to us to add that, to say that we don't have money to even start with a geophysical type of a test work in the field. Can the university, using its students and so forth, assist us to at least guide us on where to start? So we have been busy over the last number of years. I will say that for the last 5 years, there has been a lot of activities from different mining companies. Last year alone, we hosted over 60 mining companies from different parts of Africa, and all of them were coming with different issues that they wanted the Institute to work with.
Okay, fantastic. Ed, next question I want to ask you. I almost want to go to the silver bullet, but not quite. So again, one of the things that symptomatically we're seeing within mining and industry is data. Data, 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 data. Access to data, quality of data, the way we structure data, starting right almost in its inception from creating master data of our assets and so forth. And linking that strongly in terms of getting to that peak optimal performance that can unlock that steady state that I want, controlling quality, controlling volumes, and so forth. From a technology point of view, once again, with your Africa hat on, is that the silver bullet that can go in and unlock greater performance for us on the African continent with the challenges that we face as a mining community in Africa?
No, it's a very good question and a profound question. So data and digital seem to be the words nowadays that everybody really focuses on. And so what does this mean? I honestly believe, as a technical person myself, that if you don't have data to back up a decision, is that decision truly the best one that you could use? How can you measure that? How can you know that if you don't have data to back it up? The real challenge, particularly amongst African mining, is in many cases that the belief is that the data is just not usable. The belief that so it's not used in decision making. It's not used in many cases critical information. The belief, without testing this, without even fighting a single battle in this war, is that it's just not there, ready to be used. So one of the ways digital technology, has been changing that, and the new tools that exist, are the ability to take information that the real world mining, African mining has. Not the ideal model of what data should look like, but how you're going to really get it in the real world. And then bringing that and unifying it in a usable form today. So one of the things that I think is the appeal that we find in Africa is that when we come to them and say, what would you do if I told you, without going and starting a huge infrastructure project to improve your data today, that we could go in and help you make these critical decisions in your mind with the data you probably already have now. And they say, no way. I say, well, give us a chance. And this ability to slowly bring them and give them some result quickly starts to build the momentum. It's almost a snowball effect to allowing them then to start to invest and spend the time to improving the areas where more detailed, high-resolution, accurate data is needed and putting that infrastructure in place. But I think particularly in African mining, a lot of the problem lies in the fact that they're told that you need to do these major projects in order to get there. And that becomes this big barrier to overcome, both financially, time-wise, against the KPIs for day-to-day production, to do those things. And what we think that will help change that is to come in and say, what if you could start today with where you're already at, and you could begin this journey, digital journey, that allows you to get that data in a form that you have it today, get value from that. But then to make the case and show return on investment to where we can say, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, if you do these investments here, this will scale to here. A few years down, you'll scale to here. And this is the pathway that gets a lot of folks who really had felt that they had a high barrier to entry to start and move forward.
Okay, fantastic. We can go down this journey, but I need to come to the guy of the wallet before barking up the street any further. Is this even reflecting on your radar when you make a decision in terms of, yes, our money, we want to invest? We've had a whole investment panel speaking about challenges, yes and no's, and from an investment point of view. But I want to ask you specifically, Thabiso, where you said, when you guys look at the African market and where to put IDC money, where does the concept of asset management register on your decision-making process? Is it a simple yes or no, it's in place or not, or do you guys drill in? And what's the importance then thereof for you in terms of making a decision, yes, I'm going to invest, or no, I'm not?
So when you consider an investment, be it a greenfield or a brownfield investment, obviously there is a bottom-up approach that is done in terms of the analysis that you do to consider an investment. And part of that analysis is the equipment that you are going to use, how fit for purpose it is, whether it can convert a mineral in the ground into a marketable product that can be sold out there. So we do go deeper into that type of analysis, equipment selection, and check that it can really stack up with what is required of it. For example, we've got comparables based on our experiences as an investor in the industry. We can do comparables from time to time based on whatever project that is presented to us, compare the cost, say, for example, of the equipment, the conversion rates and stuff like that of that equipment, and so forth, to make sure that it is really, aligned to what the project promoters want to put on the table. I think earlier on, Bernard and Philip Tobias made my life easier here to put a simple scenario on the table. Philip said they've got a world-class ore body at Bokoni. They are busy now with feasibility studies, trying to find equipment that is fit for purpose, narrow reef mining equipment, upgrading the plant to a certain level. And at some point, Philip and his management team are going to convince themselves that the financial metrics that are getting out of that process warrants them taking the output of that to their board. And soon thereafter, obviously, I would expect if they get a yes at their board, they would then go out to market to raise capital. And by the way, Philip, the deal maker and me cannot resist and tell you that we will be ready to receive you at that time. But I think the overarching thing here, Philip, is asset management is an ongoing process. I've just described the first step of really making an investment. When you make an investment in a business, you are actually backing a management team, to be quite honest. All these challenges that you have mentioned before relating to training and so on, these are things that are expected to be taken over by a competent management team. So that is one of the key things that we look at other than the real financial metrics of the business, we also look at and bet the right horse to run this type of business. Thanks.
Okay. Can I ask 2 quick advisor questions? We're wrapping up. That clock is intimidating, I must say, Bernard. Joy.
What can I say? It's focus. Focus.
Focus. From your point of view, if you had to advise this room here, what would be the key things you would say, guys, if these are the top 3 things, focus on this from an asset management point of view in an African market in terms of unlocking growth with your asset. What would those 3 things be?
Good question. My humble opinion, I would say there's a couple of things that we covered, and let's go maybe into the detail of it, right? So trusting the data, Ed, you said let's use what we have. We've got industries that have similar behaving assets like mining. We believe it's a linear asset we can't do on-the-fly maintenance. I love motorsports. Do you think you can maintain a car while it's driving? You can't. So Formula One has figured out how in the world to drive a car for a certain number of laps, bring it in and take 3.5 seconds to make it fit for purpose for another set number of laps. Let's take that inspiration and shorten our operational durations when we actually figure out what is the health of our assets.
He's clearly a Ferrari fan. I mean, the rest of us say 2.6 seconds.
Oh, sorry.
Red Bull takes 1.
I was averaging, right? So Red Bull, yeah. I'd also then say, let's look at the automotive industry again, with Toyota figuring out a way decades ago to democratize asset management education. And if you're curious about it, look it up. It's a program called FAME. Right? They've democratized asset management education in the United States as a Japanese company and recreated their reliability and results. Why can't we do that in Africa? I mean, I live in Germany at the moment. Volkswagen produces the Polo for, I think, the global market in South Africa. We can do it on South African soil. It is happening at the moment. And then the last thing I would say is we wouldn't be here talking about all of this if South Africa, or Africa, sorry, a lot of my experience is in the South African country, on the African continent. It is so strategically positioned at that east meets west Pangea border. And we've got a significant percentage, I think 30-something% of world's resources. And we've got about 30 or 40% of the world's arable land. So people can actually live there. You can produce food out of the soil. Let's leverage those economic factors and bring that into the asset management picture, because those are assets we also need to learn how to manage. And finally, let's lead our people. Things are managed, people are led, and let's figure out that conundrum together with academia on how to plant leadership and asset management in parallel.
Thank you. 30 seconds, because I want to make a comment. Prof. Glen, if you'd advise us, how do we pull this together?
For me, I will say that the university becomes a safe space to actually test technology before you deploy it in a mine for asset management. And there's so much research that mining companies are actually not using, not only in South Africa, but globally. So I would advise anyone who's working in this particular space to say that there is so much research that you can benefit from, and universities can provide a very safe place to gather data on how safe and how efficient and how useful any type of equipment that you have. That's all.
Spoken like a true prof. Thanks. I want to summarize from my point of view in terms of the importance of asset management, taking us as an industry almost to a next revision. So in listening what we've been discussing, what I like, I am South African, I'm very optimistic, there is a very optimistic point of view, I think, of industry in general, where we sit focusing on the African continent. I think we are realistic with regards to our challenges as well. I think when it gets to this topic of asset management, what is clear for me is that we sit in a very reactive space at the moment. We sit in this reactive quadrant and we do reactive everything. I think it would be important for us in terms of moving into space where we're more proactive again and predictive, and I think that's where we're trying to drive it as an industry. But I also think we get distracted from this whole topic because of the mega factors. There's so many other factors in mining that's shouting so loud at the moment. So I think that every time that we get together as an industry and start focusing on let's deal with this as an industry, there's something, a larger economic factor, something else that's shouting, that's distracting us again. So I believe firmly, for growth in Africa, there's a place in industry for a GNU. You need to be South African to know what's a GNU, Government of National Unity. But I also want to say something in our industry of really working closer together as an industry in terms of collaborating more on specific issues, starting dealing with things in terms of uplifting our human asset, our human resource, the right training programs, example like FAME, like Joy said, and so forth, to take us forward as an industry, and unlocking a lot of key elements that can really drive us forward for growth in Africa. Boom, and I made it. Thank you, Bernard.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. So, an industry is, in the end, a whole host of things that needs to be done together. I think this broad topic of asset management immediately goes into technology, goes into skills, and after tea we come back and unpack the skills and technology even further. For a bunch of engineers, yes, I struggled, but here we are, half an hour later, mostly sense came out of your mouth. So what can I say? I mean, there's hope for the future of engineering. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bernard.
Thank you.
Thank you.